Okay, from our studios in Los Angeles and Tampa, this is Green Tag Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development on Green Tag. We normally look at all of the news each week and explain why it matters to business professionals. But this week is Halloween.
That's that typical Halloween sound, you know.
Wow, that reminded me of my childhood for a second. The little ghost that hangs in the way. And so, oh, look at that. Scott has props. I didn't bring it.
Scott always has props when it comes to Halloween.
So today, obviously, we're going to talk about Halloween. We're just talking about trends. We're talking about divisive topics. We're talking about all of the elements of Halloween. Scott and I are both deeply in the Halloween world. Scott used to run Busch Gardens, Tampa's Hallowscream for many years. And then now he has written for haunts all over the world. And I have covered haunts all over the world. In addition to working at several places, I worked in media. I also work, at a few larger clients. And of course, I used to have a scream park a long time ago. And so we both have a lot of opinions and thoughts about the haunt space, from operations to marketing to creative. And so as much as we try to move on, I think every time, we still go to things. And of course, this year I went to many haunts to make videos.
This was actually Halloween light season for me. I went to fewer haunts this year than I think I've gone to in the last 30 years. But it's interesting because some of them were haunts that I was working on, some of them, or Halloween festivals that I was working on, some of them were haunts that I did work on in the past. And some of them were some of the trends that we're seeing and we're going to discuss in the show are things that I've seen, and we did a little chit chat before we started recording, and we've discovered that some of these might just be regional. I don't know. We'll see. So when we get to that, we'll start to talk about it. But I think a lot of this stuff we've covered, but I think it's important to cover it again because this is our Halloween special. So there you go. Where do you want to start, Philip? You want to start with Horror Unleashed? You want to start in Vegas?
Okay. Horror Unleashed was the first to open for the Halloween. I'm going to say it's for Halloween season, even though Horror Unleashed is year round. Of course, it's Universal's new year round horror experience there in Las Vegas. I just started jumping into it without explaining it, and then I realized that the biggest thing I've heard about Horror Unleashed is how few people are aware of it. So I was like, maybe we should explain that it's a Universal's year round experiment in Las Vegas next to Area 15, and that media day was on August 10th. So that was when my season started. And they've been going since then. And period. Oh, you have not been, Scott, but I don't know if you watched any videos.
Yes, I've watched some of the videos, and I've talked to some people who've been other than just Philip. And the response that I'm hearing, it's interesting because I like to hear what other people have to say, because I think I'm either jaded or looking for the wrong things sometimes when I go to Halloween events. So I like to hear what other people have to say. And I haven't talked to anybody who has been overtly negative, but I also haven't talked to anybody who has been, oh my gosh, this is the best thing since sliced bread. So, and again, I think we kind of said it when we covered it on the show earlier, is it's not targeted to a hot audience, is kind of what I'm reading between the lines. It's targeted to a Vegas audience, which makes sense, which are people who enjoy haunted attractions, but are not quite as, their expectations are different than those people who work in the haunt industry. And I also think that, something that you had mentioned, Philip, was that some of the installations or pieces are installed so that they can be changed.
Yep. Which they've already announced they're going to put a Krampus experience there in the midway. Yeah.
So that makes total sense for a year-round permanent installation. You need to be as modular as possible to change that stuff out.
Yeah. I agree with all that. I think we're already going to veer off topic, or not off topic, but off into a separate. I think something people, especially us in the professional industry, I think if you've done a lot of haunts, you have a lot of haunt experience. I think what a lot of people forget is that it's kind of like the minimum viable product. It's like you have to, what really matters is what is good for your guest, what entertains your guest, and what entertains your guest in your market that you're in. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. So and that's a hard thing because, as you do more haunts and experience more things and you see all this stuff, then you have, I guess, a more refined palate, as I would say it, as somebody who's gone around and done a bunch of stuff. But you always have to think about, it's not for you, it's for the people that you're trying to get to go to your market. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people, like a lot of like just hunters, but a lot of rabid theme park fans also forget that. Like it's
Right.
not. So all that being said, I think Horror Unleashed is not for people in California that are used to Halloween Horror Nights. It is for people in Vegas who are there visiting casinos and are going to go to Area 15, get in the Uber, or somehow go over there to do multiple things, like go to Area 15 to see Meow Wolf and do or a concert or whatever. They're going to do a few things. They're going to throw this in there, and it's meant to be part of that type of experience. Like it's not meant to be something that people adjust their plans to go to. Like no one's going to go to Vegas just for. I mean, haunters maybe, but
I was
that's
gonna
the
say some
thing.
people have, but again,
If
those
you're
who have
going
are
just
not
for
are
that,
the ones who give it the least positive review.
that's exactly right. Like that's exactly right. Like if your entire thing is you're going to spend all the money and time just to go to Horror Unleashed, it's not going to be worth it. And but again, I think that's. I'm sure they knew that. Like because when I always describe it, I say it's just a watered down version of Halloween Horror Nights, which is interesting on its face, just because you would think, or common sense would make you think that that you could, or that they would be better because they have a building they built from scratch, like from spec. But it's more like they, I don't know. I mean, it's a less. It's not as good as Halloween. And whatever the reason, is it the excitement? Is it the crowd, or what is it? The missing the theme park? Whatever the reasons, it's not as good as.
Well, it's also under one roof. I think that has a lot to do with it. I think that the fact that Horror Nights, whether it's California or Florida, is more spread out. There's more anticipation built between things. There's more of a crowd energy. I think that is different because it's seasonal. So everybody's like, oh, we got to go do it now because it's going to go away. And well, now what? 72 days it'll go away. I mean, something ridiculous like that. There's a fuse to it. There's an energy to it that I don't think you're ever going to get in a year-round haunt. But I'm curious and hopeful that it will at least be sustainable, so that these kinds of things in various formats can pop up in different places.
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, I was, like I said, happy that it exists. Like, am I going to go to Vegas for it? No. Am I happy it exists? Yes. Would I go for Krampus? I'm not even sure. Only if there's other things in the area, because again, they're just adding stuff to the Midway, right? So
you'll do it if you're in Vegas, but you
that's
won't
right.
make a special trip for it.
And I think
that's exactly the target audience.
That's the target audience, exactly. That's what it's built for. So I think that kind of strain. So switching topics now, just briefly. So I drove up to Medford, Oregon, to interview a gentleman there who listens to the show a lot for a year, had listened since the beginning, and has tried to take everything I think that Scott has written in his books and try and take everything to heart, and has made a 5-year plan, where he started with just one haunt building, and then he's expanded it into a 30,000 square foot building with 3 attractions and a midway, and there's story, and I mean, it's done well. But even when I just did an interview with him, and even in the interview, he's talking about that concept of like, basically he was like, he made this invasion inspired haunt where it's about alien abductions, and he made one that is about like Indiana Jones, but horror movie, to like inspire. And so great. And then he was like, and then we had to do clowns because everybody kept asking if we had done clowns or where the clowns were and all that. And he's like, and we just had to do it because, and he mentions this about the local market and what they expect and how, it was always his dream to buy a big Gorgle or prop, but the market wouldn't care. Like that money would be, better spent on other elements that the market would be more interested in than it would be this thing, even though he wanted it. And because he knows all the haunts, but that's not, the market doesn't know that because they're in Medford, Oregon, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere. Like it's 4 hours from Portland, right? And it's 30 minutes from the California border, but it's way, way north. So it's unlikely you're going to pull people from San Francisco or Portland. So you're pulling people that don't have any major attractions in their space. Right. So just what they expect is different. So, but it's just really funny to hear that, because it's like, as much, even as if right, that that the haunt, or that clowns are cliche or this or that, there is a part of it where in less mature markets, that's what the people expect. They expect right. cliche things because that's what they're used to.
And I think it's essential to know, what the market will bear. Years and years ago for Valley Fair, I was hired to write a haunt that it was interesting because they said, this was my challenge. They said, we want something that ties directly to the Minnesotan audience, but these are not the people who can handle too esoteric a concept. So don't go too far. Yeah. So I wrote a haunt called Berserkers, which was based on a Viking myth. So, Minnesota Vikings, go team. So it was based on a Viking myth, and it was in essence a werewolf story. But it was, when we originally wrote it, and I never actually saw it produced, so I don't know how much they tried to keep as much of it as possible, from what I understand. But it was sort of the werewolf versus the werebear, and so it was basically about these Viking warriors that would consume this strange potion that would transform them into half human and half animal. And I asked them, I said, is this too esoteric? And they said, no, they get werewolves. They'll understand werewolves. They'll understand werebears. And had it been in a different market with a different audience, I might have gone a little bit, creepier and creepier for me, and dove into the folklore just a little bit more. And instead of just drinking something, it was a ritual you'd have to go through. But the idea of let's get to something we understand was imperative and essential for that market. So yeah, it's really important to kind of know what your market will bear. And I'm a firm believer that you kind of write to what the market will bear, and then each year push it just a little bit. So you train your market. You train your market to get better and better. I mean, like here, I went to Hallow Scream at Busch Gardens last night, and the event. Well, I'm going to say it. The event is back. This is the second golden age of Hallow Scream, and I worked on that event for the first 15 years, and both from a creative standpoint and a production standpoint and operation standpoint. And although it is a slightly smaller event, I got to walk around with one of my former employees who is now the man in charge. And so many of the people from the olden days have now moved up and are in positions of power, or in positions of managerial capacity. And Chris and I were talking as we walked around, and it's interesting. It was very interesting for me to go back, because he was able to do so many of the things that I wanted to do, just because we kept saying over and over throughout the course of the night, it's a different world. Yeah. The parks are different, especially Busch Gardens is different. They've taken a lot more in-house, which I would have loved to have done, but was not allowed to back in the day. They've basically taken so many of the old haunt actors that I used to work with are now creative trainers. They have creative trainers they like 4 or 5 creative trainers for the event. And that way the stage managers are solely operational for each of the haunts. But my favorite comment of the night, because we said it, Chris and I both said it at the same time. He said, we really wanted to do 6 houses, but we only have 5. And then simultaneously, we both said, better to do 5 really well than 6 with one that's mediocre, or all 6 that become mediocre. And I will say that the 5 haunts that they have are stellar. And They did not get rid of clowns completely. There is a clown scare zone because, again, to your point, clowns are a staple. There is a chainsaw scare zone. There is, but the haunts are very clever, very well done, very well done, and in true Busch Gardens form. And this is the thing that excites me the most because it takes me back to the early days. The focus, although the scenic is excellent and beautiful, the focus is still on the actors. It's
Yeah.
still on the performers, making it more terrifying than anything an animation can do. So it's and they're packed. They're really, they've designed them well so that each actor has at least two, if not three, scare positions, and that they can basically scare the same guest three times. Really well designed. Chris Lasnick, Brad Tucker. I'm going to miss people, but it's the whole Busch Gardens team that has just really ramped up their game. They're in the event is in really good shape, in my opinion. But one of the things that I found interesting, and I wanted to ask you about this in regards, because I'm kind of slipping into our tropes and trends here. One of the things that they did is, in order to maintain their budget, but also make certain that they have critical mass as far as content goes, they did fewer scare zones or smaller scare zones, but they peppered photo ops throughout the park. So, and they're standalone photo ops. I think only two of them have photographers, but the rest of them are all, take them on your own camera. They pulled out props that were not being used from their storage facility and decked them up, lit them well, just to help people create content and to help people post more about the event. And I didn't walk by a single one through the entire night that didn't have somebody taking a photo.
Yeah.
Is that happening other places? Is that kind of photo op mentality happening in other locations, Philip, that you've seen? Because you see a lot more of these than I do.
I think that, photo ops, I think, are always a great idea because, again, you're encouraging people to make a memory at your event and kind of allow them to do it in their own way. It's hard to say if they are expanding or not, just because I feel like every experience does have photo ops. I think maybe they're getting more complex as the haunters are like catching up with the theme park way of doing things. I think that they are getting more complex, but the only I know a few examples, like in Fear Factory in Salt Lake City. They have a dedicated area just for photo ops, and they redid one of their photo ops to be an homage to the fire that was there on the building. So that's like they renovate those regularly. And then there is in the Baltimore, Maryland area, there's Hera's Nightmare, who received the Oscar for Best First Year Haunt last year. This is his second year. In his second year, he said similar thing. It's not he started in year one with 3 haunts, so it took him years to build it. But he started year one in 3 haunts. So he said in year 2, he's not going to expand them because they're big enough, and he's not going to add another haunt because 3 is enough. So what he did instead is make an 18-room selfie experience where there's all just photo ops with some actors, and so he's hoping to have that open after Halloween and just change out the sets. But during the Halloween season, it does have actors that will roam and take pictures with you and those kind of elements.
It's interesting because 2 years ago, Terror Roulette, which took the Oscar, was that 2 years? 2 years.
I think so.
2 or 3 years, which took the Oscar for Outstanding New Haunt. They've kind of done that throughout, and I think it was because of labor and staffing, but they kind of shifted to doing making it more of we'll call it a selfie museum, a spooky selfie museum, content creators haven, to come in and take photos. And I like I said, I think it had to do with maintaining labor costs, but I don't know that for sure because I wasn't involved this past year. Yeah. So it's interesting to see that's part of the mentality now, because we didn't, we used to try to convince people not to take photographs. We'd try to, it goes back to the old, I don't know whether this was true at Universal in California, but at Universal Florida, if you were in a scare zone, the actors were trained to block the camera. They were
Mm.
trained to come up and put their hand in front of the camera or scare in front of the camera, so that you wouldn't get all of the entire experience online. But now that's shifted completely,
Yeah.
and it's encouraging that, finding ways to encourage that, um, so that they can, certainly for a marketing purpose, but it's also, I think it's guest experience. I think they
Yeah.
want to be able to say, look at the cool shot I got at Halloween Horror Nights or whatever.
Yeah, I think in a weird way, it's an easy way to make it more interactive in a
Yeah,
way where they
yeah,
have, they can take photos and they can work. But I think again, it just goes back to the entertainment value, and I think it just is what is entertainment has changed a little bit. But I do think that ultimately, I think that people still enjoy interacting with the characters, and I think scare zones and those whole thing have become part of that. Like queue line actors have become much more important in that they interact with guests, but also help make content for
hmm
it. And so it's a little bit of double-edged sword. I heard that recently, I actually heard recently that Universal has stopped allowing their characters to talk presumably because one of them said something they shouldn't have said on a camera when somebody was recording. But so again, it is kind of that double-edged sword type of thing. But that does seem to be, again, I think that's a big part of the entertainment nowadays is you interacting with the individual
right.
performers and doing that fun stuff. And I'm trying to think at Hush, there's a photo experience, but it's actually, if anything, I would say it's a little behind the times because I think like at Hush, they do a photo that is taken by a camera operator, and then you can
hmm
pay $5 to get a digital version
hmm
or $10 to get a print version, and that's really outdated. Like
Yep.
that's not like nobody wants to pay for a photo anymore, and it doesn't matter because most of the ones that like the difference in quality is not enough. Basically, I think it is the problem now that you have people with great cameras and cell phone that do good in low light,
hmm
and unless it's going to be an experience, it's not. I think I think that's definitely behind the times. And then they don't have any photo ops, and the queue line actors don't encourage photos or videos. So it's really the one thing they do is they have the stage there in the queue line, and people always record the stage because people are fire dancers and whatnot.
Sure, sure. It's interesting that you say that though, because printed photos at Zoo Tampa, at Creatures of the Night, which again is a more family friendly experience, but they do, as you go into their the one, well, we'll call it the three pumpkin haunt, the one haunt that is a little bit spookier and we'll get some screams and startles. They do a green screen photo as you go in, and the green screen backgrounds are all things that the guests need to interact or react to.
Yeah,
So those will be screaming this way and screaming that way,
yeah,
and as you leave, but those sell because they don't offer a digital only option. They offer a print option, and then if you buy a print for an upsell, you can get all of the rest of the photos they took digitally,
yeah.
which is a super smart idea, really. But those do sell well, and maybe that's because of it's a different audience, it's a family audience.
And
And I know
it's,
that
again, it's back to something you can't make on your own. We talked
correct,
about this before, but like
correct.
the it's just like the magic. I forget what they're called at Disney, but it's the same concept at Disney where you take the pictures in the area and then they add in characters or things to it because you
You're
can't do
holding
it on your
Tinkerbell
own.
in your hands, yeah.
Yeah, again, yeah, and people like those. There's plenty of people that like those, but yeah, we didn't talk about sliders, and I think we wanted to talk about
I was
sliders.
going to say let's move into our trends and tropes section, and we'll finish off the show with that. So sliders, at Busch Gardens, sliders are back, and the pendulum, since I left, every single year that I was at Busch, I had to fight to keep sliders because there's a perception, and I use that term very specifically. There is a perception that they have safety issues, but a well-trained slider is no more dangerous than a well-trained person with a chainsaw or a well-trained person with any prop.
Still walkers, yeah.
Stilt walkers, yeah. But they did something very interesting with them. Instead of keeping them all together, they kind of peppered them throughout the park. So it's not a slider zone, but sliders are part of multiple zones or multiple areas throughout the park. So they're much more of a surprise when they pop up. And of course, sliders do things in different ways. There are some that, back when we did sliders when I was there, we did upright sliders as opposed to all four sliders, sliding on all fours. But they're some of those. There's some of the old school upright sliders on their knees. Every spark gimmick you could possibly imagine. And they're back, and there's obviously safety is still an issue, and there's still the desire or the need to convince the powers that be that it's a safe way to scare people. But I think they're trending again. Have you seen that, or is that just here?
Oh yeah, I don't think that's not a single year thing. I would say they've been trending for the past maybe since the pandemic. I mean, they've been on the upswing for a while, and I don't know. I don't have a problem with it personally. I like sliders personally. Like I think that it can be fun. I especially like when they do have the friction and the ability to spark and that kind of a thing. I think it reminds me of just like the circus where they used to have all the circus, like the vampire circus and all those things where it's just really like a cirque show or a regular thing, but they put makeup on. I think it's that similar idea where it's really just a form of physical stunt, but then you're putting it into the Halloween category because what other holiday is it really going to fit under? And that's so many times that happens with Halloween where you're like,
Halloween is a testing ground. It's in both of the books. Yeah. It's in both of my books. Halloween is a testing ground for all kinds of things.
Yeah, and so I think that's where you get the sliders that fall in there, and then making it. I do think it's a perfect thing because it does scare people. It startles them. But you know what? Again, this goes back to the thing. I make slider videos a lot, and because they have become such a staple of the big events, like Hershey Park has the Decade Brigade that they contract with to come out and do a nightly performance, and that thing is absolutely packed. Like people will line up, and this is Hershey Park, and just keep in mind, folks, people will line up hours before at Hershey Park, which is it's lunacy. And I've been there covering it, and aside from the time they're doing the show, all they're doing the rest of the time is taking pictures with people because people want pictures, and they barely get any sliding in. But it is a very divisive topic because of what you talked about, the safety, and because a lot of the haunt connoisseur people say it has something to do with Halloween and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I always go back to like the main point of the experience is to entertain people. And if this is what people find entertaining nowadays, if they want to watch these basically skateboarders, slide around on the ground and make sparks in makeup that they put on themselves in many cases, fine. Like who cares?
And this goes back to the different ways that sliders have been handled too. Bush Tampa, for example, has never done a slider show. They've never done a slider show. The sliders have done stunts and tricks, but they've never done a slider show. They've always been characters who use sliding as a scare tactic.
Yeah, I prefer that.
I do too. And that's why I was very adamant about it. And I was really glad to see that when I went back this year, that was their approach when they brought them back, is to make them part of the various
become a huge thing, though.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a huge thing.
Yeah. It's really impactful. Okay, so let's move on to another controversial topic: chainsaws. Yes or no?
Well, I think it's similar, right? Because I don't know. Everyone just loves chainsaws. What are you going to do? Like, I think, again, it goes back to how mature your market is. If you're in a very mature market with a lot of competition, I think you could cut the chainsaw. But if you're not, then you need it because that's what people are going to expect. That's Halloween in their brains, right? In America, at least, in America is to have that component. And again, it's similar to the slider where like there are people that just love to be scared by chainsaws. I don't know. But it's in Asia, it's not a thing. In Asia, it's not at all a thing. And people look at you weird. They're like, why would a chainsaw be scary?
Well, it's interesting because with me, a chainsaw is fine as long as it makes sense within the concept. A clown with a chainsaw makes no sense to me. A cannibal with a chainsaw makes sense to me. But one of the things, again, going back to what Bush did, and I think
a clown with a chainsaw, which is a scare zone at Universal every year.
Yeah, I know. Been there, done that, but I will say one of the things that Bush did really well is they did one scare zone that is relatively short, Um, it is the scenic is basically a bunch of pine trees, so it's like you're going through a pine forest, and you have
Hmm.
these crazed, wicked, evil lumberjack characters. The entire area, it's in an arbor, so the entire area just echoes with the sound of chainsaws. So you know they're there. It builds a nice sense of anticipation, and then when they finally come out to do the scare, it releases that sense of anticipation, which is exactly what you want to do with scares. Um, there are some, I agree with you. It's impossible to find a replacement. Believe me, I've tried for many, many years. And there's leaf blowers, but there's nothing threatening about a leaf blower.
There's a lot of wrong
Um,
things, but yeah, they're not as threatening in America, at least, I think.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, is there any other trend or trope? We're almost out of time. Is there any other trend or trope that you wanted to throw out there before we finish off our little Halloween special here? Because we're gonna have to. We've got so many things we still want to talk about, so we're gonna have to carry
Yeah.
it on into the Patreon
Yeah,
show.
yeah. Let's just go to our Patreon show, and we'll keep talking there about Halloween and trends. Because yeah, we made a whole list, or I made a list, and then I
Yeah, Philip made a list, and we got about
didn't use it at all. But
we
making
got,
a
we got
list is
like
what's
4 points
important.
on it, which was very nice. Yeah, four
Yeah,
whole points. But anyway, so guys, happy Halloween. I hope the Halloween season is treating you well. I hope you've had a great time. Hope you've had a chance to get out and visit some haunts, and so because I know we have, and so I hope you learn stuff too, because that's the most important reason to go see other people's haunts, is to see what's working and what's not, and how you can adapt it for your audience. So that's
yeah,
probably the biggest takeaway from this particular show. So on
yeah.
behalf of Philip Hernandez and myself, Scott Swenson, this is Green Tag Theme Park in 30. We will see you next week, and happy Halloween.